Hi, hello, welcome in. I'm Jerrica, and also, I'm Chickadee or Chick. I'm an editor, writer, and all-around content creator who has a way with words. I did the Newbie book tag tube a little while ago on another channel, but I didn't really continue that train of content for a few relatively uninteresting reasons. So we're going to take a look at it, as well as answer a few more questions, because not only am I a reader, I suppose, but I'm going to answer the AuthorTube Newbie tube. Oh my gosh, the AuthorTube Newbie tag. And I don't know where EditorTube is. If you're out there, please come find me. But I've made up a couple of questions to answer from the EditorTube side as well. First, we'll do a rapid-fire introduction of the things that you would usually ask people when you first meet them. I'm Jerrica, also known as Chickadee or Chick on other parts of the interweb, and I just graduated from a professional writing program and promptly launched writing and editing services for businesses and authors. Prior to this round of school, I did a lot of work in commercial kitchens. I am currently 31, I grew up in the Ottawa Valley, and I've been living in Ottawa proper for something like 12 years now. I think anything else that you'll want to know about me will be covered in all of the questions coming up. If you're more interested in BookTube, AuthorTube, or EditorTube, I will leave timestamps for you if you want to click around. But without further ado, here is both present me and past me with BookTube Newbie tag. Why did you start this channel? Before anything else, I think it's important to say that this channel isn't only BookTube and certainly didn't start that way. Okay, so this is obviously a new channel, but it is still true that this will not just be BookTube in the sense of it's just going to be about me reading books. This is going to be a catch-all for all of my creative type content. So originally this channel was created for TTRPG stuff, mainly D&D, but dabbling in some other things. Both actual plays as well as brainstorming sessions and a smidgen of educational content. So that channel still exists. It's a little on the back burner right now. I do have 3 YouTube channels. So if you're interested in that, definitely go subscribe to it. But know that you're only guaranteed monthly content. But adding in BookTube and some other creative endeavors specifically as to why this now exists, I think the catalyst was going back to school for professional writing. 100% still true. It just took me a while to be able to sit down and really start planning and making this content. What are some fun and unique things you bring to BookTube? Fun and unique? I feel like I covered it, but it won't be just BookTube. Still stands true. You're gonna get kind of like all words-based stuff. So you're gonna get writing, you're gonna get editing, along with reading, and maybe there's gonna be some other stuff that's kind of adjacent to it, but I don't know how to describe that part yet. So having a variety of things on the channel, I think, adds a fun uniqueness to the channel itself. But like specifying that right back down to BookTube, I think, again, I mentioned before, but I think being a student of writing. Not only does this bring a certain part of knowledge and focus to the channel, being that I am constantly thinking about writing already, but I will be adding a lot of writing elements kind of adjacent to the reading elements of BookTube. My plans for that are even more in-depth than they were at this time. Plus, I hope my script writing will be okay at the very least and will improve both doing it for the channel, but also just with the more that I learn about how to write well. I do think that my script writing has already gotten better from writing scripts for the games channel, which you can also subscribe to. You can find that down in the description too. What are you most excited for about this channel? The same thing I've always been excited for when it comes to these online creative endeavors. The community. I'm excited to share this part of my interests with everybody who's already here. Okay, so not a lot of people already here because this was originally on another channel, but the idea of building a community is still very important to me. Whether it be here, TikTok, or Twitch, but then also just bringing in even more people into this community and joining a whole new community of, from at least what I've seen as a viewer, a lot of really cool and nice people. Why do you love reading? Where to begin? The answer that everyone is expecting, and wouldn't be a lie, of course, is escapism. But I honestly just love words. I like analyzing and critiquing various mediums, and writing is one of those, as well as film and TV. I don't have nearly as much knowledge about those, but I still like to do it. What I mean by that is generally when I'm talking about other types of media, while other people may be looking at things like cinematography and I have an appreciation for that, I don't have as much knowledge to actually like critique it beyond what like the average viewer might. And I like to consume different stories in different ways and for different reasons. So sometimes it is just for the mindless pleasure or that escapism, but sometimes I garner more pleasure from reading between the lines, or just enjoying the art that is word and story crafting. Sometimes it's about just enjoying the story, being there along the way, being immersed. And sometimes it's about the craft itself. It's about admiring what other writers have been able to do with their words and taking inspiration from my own writing. What book series got you into reading? You expect me to remember decades ago? I barely remember this morning or last week. I think I liked a lot of books as a young one. I definitely read like a lot of picture books and a lot of small novels. But some of the first series I remember. Okay, I know that I'm gonna ramble here a little bit, so I might end up cutting it out. So basically, there are a couple of series from when I was very young. There's this unicorn series, I'll insert a picture because there's already one in that video, as well as like Rowan of Rin I read. I only read the first book of that, really enjoyed it. And then I go on to talk about the Belgariad, which is something that I read when I was a little bit older. And actually, I just reread another series that I think was like pretty early on in my like reading of novels, which is the Chronicles of Amber. I think I'm gonna do a video on it because it was a reread, and there's like a couple other reasons that I want to do it. But I'll let myself ramble right now, but I don't know if it'll make it to the final video. So some of the first series I remember are, I'm not sure what this series is actually called, but it's about unicorns. And I definitely remember spending a lot of time reading this. I don't think I actually ever finished it. In fact, I don't think I've read this one. I think this is the last book I picked up, and I never finished it. It's actually because I'm missing a book, and the book before this one wasn't there. Shadow Unicorn, The Land Without Unicorns, The Promise of the... That's the one I couldn't find. So I just reread a bunch of that other series like I was talking about. I wonder if it would be like an interesting thing to go back and reread some of these like middle grade. I was definitely reading before those times, but I don't really remember what I was reading. So I do feel like getting into reading was this unicorn book series. I do, like, that's the one that stands out as being the first one. What questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? I'm really bad at answering questions like this. I'm much better at answering questions than I'd rather just have a conversation. Kind of, like, without any context. But I think I would probably ask, what is your favorite series or video that you've ever done, and why did you enjoy it? What challenges do you think starting a BookTube channel will be the hardest to overcome? So because this isn't like my first YouTube foray or online very much not my first YouTube foray, as I say, especially since you're currently watching the third YouTube channel, I think this will all still ring true. Just because when you first start YouTube, I think you have different challenges than starting a different YouTube. For I don't think that I'm going to have the same sort of obstacles, but I think I'm going to have a consistent obstacle in being consistent. This is something that, as creators, we're told we absolutely have to be consistent, and then we also get the, like, quality over quantity, but also quantity is important, so that's always this struggle of making sure that you're putting out content often enough that people don't forget about you, but also taking care of yourself. So I think that's I think that's just a consistent problem across the board. And of course, it is important to take care of yourself. I think that's just like a good thing to remember overall for viewers. This is kind of like a look behind the scenes, is that being consistent's really difficult, especially when you're starting out on YouTube and it's not your only job. So it's kind of my only job right now, in the sense that I'm self-employed and this is part of that self-employment. But I do have like the other part of my work to like get done in addition to this. It's really hard to be a part-time creator. When did you start reading? So I don't remember a time that I didn't read. I think I covered this a little bit in like what got me into reading, but that's like the answer to it is I started reading when I was able to read. Oh crap, I had something to say. I hate that. Oh, I was gonna say, I'm a person of many interests, and I think I'm actually going to talk about that later in the video. But, like, words has been the one thing that has stuck around forever and ever and ever. I can't remember a time where I wasn't reading, and then once I could write, I was writing. I even enjoyed editing a lot earlier than I think a lot of editors do. Like, I thought I could be an editor. Like in high school, that was something that I like considered as a career. So words is the one consistent thing in my life, even if making content about it isn't. Where do you read? Right now, most of my reading happens at home. For a while, I was reading in bed pretty much every night. I think this is such a weird question. I almost didn't answer it the first time. Especially with taking up annotating as a hobby, which I am really enjoying. It does make the, like, before sleep reading a lot more difficult, especially with my cat's routine, which had been, you know, like, I'm reading, the cat crawls up, stops me from reading with a bunch of, like, tabs and markers and things around. That doesn't sound like a great time for me. So I haven't been annotating. I still really like the idea of annotating, but it just doesn't fit with the like when and where I'm reading. For this exact reason, a lot of my reading is still happening in bed before I go to sleep. And it just isn't conducive to annotating. I'm gonna try something, I think, coming up, and taking like some voice notes, and maybe doing some like not making annotating so complicated. Maybe I'll do a whole thing on that too. I think this video might give me a lot of ideas for future videos, which is great. I don't have a long commute anymore, so reading on a commute isn't really an option. And even then, if I do like pick up a job that has a long commute, I am so far behind on my podcast that I don't think audiobooks is the right call. I honestly, like, I still believe this. I think I much rather a podcast. I really like having a physical book. And also, while I have been able to read on commutes in the past, and I'm sure I could now, I talk about it, motion sickness is a thing. And I kind of don't mind just sitting staring out the window. But I like my podcasts, and I don't think that I would get the same joy out of an audiobook as I do a physical book. I could maybe do digital books, but even then, haven't gotten into that yet. What kind of books do you like to read? I don't have a type. I like to try new stuff. A lot of the books that I have read have been fantasy, but that's more because that's what was available to me. And then, by available to me, I don't mean like I couldn't go to the library or I couldn't go to the bookstore. But I was actually reading like the physical books that my dad had from when he was younger. And so because I could get my hands on those really easily, that's what I read. Then I'll let her continue because she's gonna say what I'm gonna say, and I'll let her say it. It was easier to just continue reading fantasy. If I were to look at the other books that I've read, you know, a bunch of fantasy, and then I went to school, like university, and it was a bunch of classics. And now that I'm back to reading again, I'm hoping to branch out further. So really, this is going to be about my writing and reading journey. It's going to be me checking out new types of books, new genres, different lengths, new authors, old authors that I haven't tried yet, in genres that I haven't tried yet. What does your book collection look like? I'm not gonna show you. I'm gonna do a new one because it's mostly the same books, but I've moved. You maybe can't tell because I still just have the bookcase behind me, but I've moved and I've redone, and so I'm gonna do I'll like do like a little video like this again, but then I'll also probably do like a more in-depth book tour like I did last time. There is another book tour, but I think I'm just gonna redo that one. We're not gonna do this again. So we've done the BookTube thing, so now we're gonna do the AuthorTube thing. I did take a couple questions out that I just didn't think were, I don't know, worth answering. And then some that kind of like overlap a little bit because it's like the YouTuber question. The first question is, if you were a book, how would you pitch yourself? A jack of all trades, a lover of novelty. And I struggle to label myself as anything because I lack a depth of focus of my hobbies because I can't pick just one or two. But I think the most important part of me is that I care deeply about others and I want to help them and know them. And then, of course, I also have a love of narrative. The next question is, what do you usually write? This is kind of a weird one for me because I feel like this is really geared towards creative writers and like novel writers. I'll answer it for creative writing, even though there's also a huge chunk of my writing that isn't in that creative way. But I don't have a favorite genre, but rather more like a favorite theme or tone. And I find my writing tends to be character heavy. I'm super like interested in exploring like emotion and the human condition, particularly kind of like darker themes within human life. And kind of like I said before, creative writing hasn't really been my focus for a really long time. And I'll get to like what started me back up writing in a little bit, but creative writing has definitely become a little bit more of a focus. It's come a little more into view through doing creative writing courses within my college program. Next question is, what's something you'll never write? And I'm not confident enough to say that there's anything that I will never write. Now, something that might be a surprise to most people in AuthorTube, especially because, like I said, this seems to be geared very towards novel writers, is I have very little desire to write a novel because I prefer shorter pieces. I'm a short story girly. Now, again, I don't have the confidence to say that I will never write something longer. Maybe one day I'll have an idea that needs a longer form and I'll write a novella, and maybe I'll really enjoy the process of writing that. And then I'll be like, maybe I can write something longer. Or in the same vein, you know, writing like linked stories, short story collection is something that I'm interested in trying, and that's kind of like writing a novel. And I was actually just at a panel recently where one of the authors on it has just published a linked stories collection, and he did mention that it was kind of similar, to when he was writing novels. So it's always possible. It's just not my current preference or focus to write a novel. So rather than like, I'll never write a certain genre or something like that, I'm unlikely to write a novel because that's just not my preferred length of story. The next question is, what made you want to start writing? In the grand scheme of things, I don't think anything made me want to start writing. I think I just started writing. So I guess the best answer to like the overall why did I start writing when I was a kid is probably because I started reading as a kid. But more recently, what got me to go back to school for professional writing is blog writing. I started doing blogs for the kitchen job I was in. And I realized that I actually really enjoyed that style of writing. And that seemed like a way that I could make money that wasn't a kitchen. And it's not that I don't enjoy kitchen work. If I could work like one shift in a well-organized kitchen, that's like a 4-hour shift, every week or something like that, that would be great. But it is very hard on your mind and body to work in the industry the way the industry is. And then the other thing is, since that was starting writing in like web writing, going back to school did actually reignite creative writing for me. So there's kind of 3 answers to that question, I guess. I just did it. I ended up doing it as a side job at a job, and that pushed me to pursue writing further. And then in pursuing writing further, my love was reignited for creative writing specifically. What's your biggest writing struggle? I don't know how to answer this question. It's kind of like all of it and none of it. And it's different day to day what I'm gonna have more trouble with. For a little while, I was thinking that the biggest struggle I had with writing was idea generation, but fortunately for me, I actually just did a project that kind of like upped my confidence in idea generation. So in the past, I've kind of like not relied on, but I have often been seeking like prompts in order to start a story idea for me. Like once there's like a seed of an idea, I could like run with it. My issue is like the seed. And then I got assigned a project to write a writing prompt blog post. So I was coming up with the seeds, and it was an interesting thing for me to do, and like I said, it just kind of boosted my confidence in the one thing that like I kind of saw as a struggle. So I don't think that I have a writing struggle. I think sometimes I just struggle with writing, if that makes any sense. And then on the flip side of that, the next question is, what's your best writing skill? And my answer is probably editing. And I'm much better at editing for somebody else than I am for myself, which I think is very common amongst writers and editors alike. At least editors who write. If editors don't write, then I guess they don't have that problem. But that counts as a writing skill, right? Now, if I have to answer something about the actual, like, writing, it's a weird one. Because it's probably plain language, which isn't technically creative writing. But something that was interesting to me is that while I was learning about plain language and kind of like business writing and web writing, like writing reports and press releases and summaries and things that like you are more likely to write in the office than you are at home or whatever. I learned a lot in that course that I then found actually really informed my writing style in creative writing. So the things that I was learning in professional writing were lining up with things that made sense in my creative writing. This is another one of those things that I think may spur on a whole video if I can get my thoughts together enough on it, which I think I can do. And that's it for AuthorTube newbie tag. And EditorTube, are you out there? If you are, I hope you see this. Tell me if you already have one, but every time I try to find some sort of like editor community, it ends up being the video editor community or the photo editing community. The word editing community, for some reason, I don't know, you guys are like all hiding in a cave somewhere and I want an invite. But in lieu of being able to find an EditorTube newbie tag, I've just written some questions that I'm then going to answer, and I encourage any editors who see this, or maybe writers, because, you know, all writers self-edit. I encourage people to answer these questions themselves, whether you're a viewer and you want to answer them in the comments, or if you want to make your own video, and then let me know that you've made it, please do. So the first question is, what's your favorite level or style of editing? I didn't know how to answer, or how to ask this better, but hopefully my answer will help. So my answer is substantive and stylistic editing, kind of like, rather than copy editing or proofreading. I like to make a realized piece stronger by shifting the structure to reveal the story in a more satisfying way, or like honing in on the theme and seeing where we can hammer that home a little harder, and making sure that sentences say exactly what they want to say, no more and no less. And while I'm perfectly capable of line and copy editing, and I do still enjoy doing those things, I do really enjoy looking at the slightly bigger, slightly less technical picture. What is your specialty, whether this is a genre or a writing style? This is twofold, because I could fall on my answer from the previous question and say that my specialty is the substantive and stylistic editing of short fiction. But I think that's kind of a lie. I truly excel at editing for plain language, which I mentioned enjoying writing that. I also enjoy editing that. And I find that it activates a similar part of my editing brain, because even though it tends to be more technical in nature, you tend to be doing more copy editing, there is a certain art to it that leans more on some stylistic principles. And again, this is probably another video thing, but kind of like an example of that is writing in the passive voice isn't wrong. Sometimes it's right. I know that very often the advice is, like, always write in the active voice, A lot of that advice out there seems so like, you have to do it this way, but there are reasons to write in the passive voice. And even in plain language, there are times, but to me, deciding whether you leave something in passive voice or change it to active voice, while it is a technical change, it is kind of like a stylistic choice. And you do that in creative writing as well, but I think because editing for plain language, I feel like it's always going to be like a heavier copy edit that has a couple more of those stylistic things in it. Maybe that's why I'm so drawn to it. Because I think that's it, is because it's editing for plain language. That's like a whole new style of editing, in my mind. It isn't copy editing or stylistic editing, or line editing. It's kind of like a subgenre or something like that. Like it isn't one of the like main four or something. If you want more on the main four, I'm actually there might be a blog post up right now about it. If there is, that'll be linked down below. I'm rambling, so I'm gonna move on. This is one of those, like, I have to ask. Oxford comma, M dashes, or parentheses. How strong are your feelings on these, and what are your feelings? So, my feelings aren't particularly strong, but I do have opinions. I generally opt for an Oxford or serial comma, and I've never really been a big M dash user. I've always been a parentheses user for asides. I came across a lot of people who really love M dashes while I was at school, so I don't know. Of course, as an editor, though, it comes down to consistency, and whatever's in the style guide, I'll do the other thing, and I won't be that upset about it. I know some people, like, they get, like, really uppity about it, but yeah, I have an opinion, it's not strong. The next question is, any other grammar or spelling pet peeves? And I have strong opinions about this one. This is a new one, and I don't know if it's been around for a long time, like, it's new to me. I don't know if it's been around for a long time or not, because I haven't really been, like, in the editing scene. But I came across it on a style guide that I was using. Who the heck puts a period after an ellipse? Like, if it's a style guide, I'll do it! But why? Why are, like, why 4 dots? You don't need 4 dots. 3 dots fine. It's so silly, but I saw it and I had, like, a visceral reaction to it, the same way that lots of people have visceral reactions to, like, the Oxford comma or not using the Oxford comma. And I'm sure there are loads of other things out there. Like, there are certain, like, homonyms that people get really uppity about, and I have my own. But this one I wanted to bring up because it's a new one, and I don't get it. And then for anybody else who is going to do this, I've already answered these questions kind of as part of the other sections. But if you're doing this strictly as an editor for EditorTube, again, if EditorTube exists, find me, please. But please tell us about, why you're starting an editing channel, or why you did start an editing channel. What you think will be your greatest challenge, or maybe what has been your greatest challenge, with YouTube specifically, and what unique quality do you bring to the group? Like I said, I've answered these in the BookTube section, but I would love to hear other people's answers. Thank you so much for sticking around and learning a little bit more about me and about the channel. Like, subscribe, comment, etc. I encourage any questions, whether they're questions that you think were missed in this that I should have answered, or if they're questions about my answers you want to know more. I hope you enjoyed. I had a blast. Catch you next time. Bye.